The JSE is slightly up, but the rand is under pressure so far today. Investors are looking ahead to the U.S. inflation data reading due later for clues about the Federal Reserve's next steps. Sanlam investment analyst Roy Mutooni joins us now for an overview of the market moves. Thank you very much, Roy, for your time. Let's start with exactly that, how the local index and currency are faring so far today.
Hi, thanks for having me. So the local market's marginally up. It's up about 50 basis points, with Naspers and Process leading on the back of the relatively strong results that were announced yesterday. But the rest of the market's just been gravitating around this plus or minus 1.5% over the past week, just showing a little bit of uncertainty, very little direction, and I guess, like you say, waiting to see what global trends are.
Stats SA has published the latest producer price index print for October. What are the numbers looking like?
So the PPI for October is up at about 5.8%. Previously it was about 5.1%, and I think this just reflects exactly what we saw with the CPI print. Underlying costs in the economy continue to go up, and that typically would be passed on, and that's why you see that in the CPI as well. I think it will probably be a little bit transitory. As energy prices come down, you might see a little bit of pressure easing. But yes, right now it looks like the direction is marginally up.
The African Development Bank has slashed its GDP forecast for the African continent amid political instability. What's going on there?
Yes, so I think the African Development Bank expects a little bit of a dip this year before a small recovery next year. Remember, most of these African economies are exporters, either of commodities or unfinished goods, and global demand has generally been weak. The governments are also highly indebted following all the spending people needed to do in COVID, and because they've been unable to export, have also been unable to pay down this debt. And then global interest rates have been quite high, and I think a lot of these central banks also follow the global trends. So there's also soft demand there. So and remember, the Ukraine wars complicated everything around food inflation, and that impacts a lot of these countries. So I think that's the driver of the weaker growth outlook. It probably will continue for a little bit longer than they expect, but yeah, that's the environment that these governments have to deal with for the short to medium term.
Transaction capital will swing to a headline loss of more than 700 million rand in the year to end September and has stopped financing new taxis. Talk us through that trading update.
So the headline loss was largely expected. I think it was probably better than people expected, but I think the little surprise that comes there is that in their previous announcement they had said that they would no longer finance second-hand or refurbished taxis, and they would actually get rid of that whole business. But in this announcement they've said that actually it's the other way around, that they'll keep the business, they'll not disclose it as a discontinued operation, and they'll continue selling and financing refurbished. It's a complete change in what they said previously, but I think they have a presentation over the course of today or tomorrow. Maybe we'll be able to find out what the root cause of that is.
All right. The Durban High Court has dismissed troubled sugar producer Tongaat Hewlett's bid to avoid paying industry levies owed to the South African Sugar Association. What's going on?
Yeah, so these industry levies are part of a long-term thing which is agreed within the industry that allows every farmer to get exactly the same price for sugar that they sell, and the larger processors, the larger millers, to subsidize the smaller guys. And what tends to happen is if somebody doesn't pay, then it means everybody else's levy goes up to cover that for the sake of consistency. The business rescue practitioners, on the other hand, are basically saying this is just a creditor like any other who needs to be held back, and for them to resolve all the issues around the business rescue, so they preferred not to pay. And I guess basically what the High Court is saying is, I don't think this is in line with what should happen. The absolute detail of the judgment hasn't actually been issued. I think we'll only find that out on Monday or on Tuesday to get the absolute detail. But I think it's a reasonable outcome.
Thank you very much, Sanlam Investments analyst Roy Mutooni.